Setting up your turntable, a few recommended tips for getting probably longer life out of your vinyl, getting some reasonable sound out of your record player, and hopefully maintaining and supporting your setup in a easy fashion. So one of the first things that you should look at, where to place your record player. One of the things you should definitely do is light sources of heat. You should try and move your record player away from them as much as possible. I mean, each room has a balance and a compromise, no doubt, but if you've got, for instance, central heating or radiators or any kind of heat source, if you've got direct sunlight, you want to try and keep your record player away from those items as much as you can. Now, me personally, I tend to isolate the central heating and it never comes on in this room, and in terms of the direct sunlight, I've moved it out of the direct sunlight, and in fact I've got some blinds on that window which I pull down when I'm using my record player setup. The next thing is the level or position. I would recommend with record players, try and place them at a reasonable height so that you're not constantly bending and crouching, or if you've a bit like me, you've got a bad back, you don't need that bending motion too often. So place it at a reasonable height off the floor, place it on a very steady, very solid and robust surface, a surface which is flat, as flat as you can find. And one of the things you will do is you'll take a spirit level and you'll measure when you set up your turntable and you find a location for it. You'll make sure that everything's flat for that turntable when you set it up. So one of the most important things that you're going to do is be able to establish that the record player setup is on a flat surface. So what you'll need is a spirit level. You can have your small spirit level or something a little bit more industrial, but appropriate. And what you should be doing is you should be checking the surface itself. In this case, the bookshelves on which I've rested the record player. You should also check, once you've rested the record player plinth onto the surface, you should be able to see here that the bubble level is right in the center, and what that will do is give you a degree of confidence that your record player is sitting in a place which is not going to distort or provide an incorrect alignment for the tone arm and the stylus when it addresses the vinyl on your record player. The flatter the surface, the better you can get the bubble into the center, the more chance you have of doing some great things with your cartridge, your tone arm and the record player, in playing good music, good sounds through your records. Okay, so that's the surface itself. You want to find the balance or the center. If it is off to any degree, then what you can do is look for any kind of padding or support underneath the record player, or if you've got adjustments on the record player. Some record players have adjustable feet, for instance. You should be able to adjust the feet underneath the record player in turn until you can readdress the spirit level, and then find that. If you follow me here on my setup, one of the things that when you get into hi-fi is people will always tell you about electromagnetic interference. So any strong currents or electrical sources interfering. Because you are dealing with, in this case, a cartridge with either a moving magnet or even more sensitive, a moving coil construction, then if you can, try and keep any strong electrical sources or currents a reasonable distance away from your record player and your tone arm. Okay, that obviously, again, everything is a compromise. Some rooms, some spaces will allow for that. Others, you make the best compromise you can and you tweak until you find a sound which is suitable for your setup. Another thing to be mindful of is mass. So in this instance you have a Garrard 401. It is what's known as a rim drive mechanism. It's not belt driven, which tends to be a little bit, I'd say, little bit gentler on the record playing area. Rim drive, it connects the torque of the motor directly to the rim of the actual record player itself. So there's a lot more force being applied to the record playing area. In which case, for record players like this, what you need is a solid base, something with a lot of mass. Some people go so far as to use slate or stone plinths in which to rest their record players, and what that stone plinth or that slate plinth is supposed to do is provide dampening and a solid, immovable enclosure in which the record player can operate, so it doesn't produce any unwanted vibration or oscillations. Remember, all of the movements, all of the vibrations, all of those micro movements are translated into how the stylus picks up the signal from the vinyl. So the more you can do to dampen and isolate vibrations and unwanted signals from the operation of the stylus picking up the signal from the record player, or the record, the better you will have in terms of true fidelity of sound between the record player and the amplification coming out of your speakers. You may also want to consider for your record player setup a specific mat, a dampening mat for your record player. You can buy Sorbothane or rubber, or in this case I've used an Acromat, which has very good vibration and unwanted frequency dampening properties. You can experiment, see what works well with yourself, but the intention behind all of that is, how do I isolate any unwanted signals and vibrations from, again, the operation of the cartridge, the stylus, sitting on top of the record and picking up the signals from the record. The less interference, the less noise that is taking place during that pickup between the stylus and the record, the better it is, again, for your true fidelity of sound. Another useful item to consider in your record setup is something called a record clamp. This is a device used for securing records. You place the record onto your turntable platter. You then use the record clamp to sit on top of the record, sitting directly on the spindle. And then some record clamps have a screwing in mechanism just to secure and fix that record clamp on top of the record. It further ensures that when the record is moving, what you're not doing is moving the record on top of the turntable platter and thereby creating any differences in the tracking ability of your stylus on top of the record. It just provides an additional level of noise reduction and vibration reduction. You may want to consider that. This is a Mitchell record clamp, but you may find others. Some are just simple weights that you can place on the center spindle. Others are, like this, a screwing mechanism which you can use.